So today I'm going to bring you a simple one. The movie I'm going to talk about today is called Beast of War, and it's by director Kia Roach Turner. Now, the only other movie that I've seen of his that I liked was actually 2024's spider horror creature feature called Sting, which went under the radar because it came just around the time that another big creature feature spider film came out called Infestation. And the director of that movie is actually the one who I believe is directing Evil Dead Burn, the next big Evil Dead installment. So that movie was much bigger in scope because it was an entire apartment building being infected by very smart, very ferocious spiders, and Sting was not. It was more of a Gremlins light film where a little girl befriends a spider and it grows and grows and starts stalking people into the around the apartment complex and or apartment building. Beast of War follows Australian soldiers in 1941 who you start getting to know during their boot camp. You get the usual bunch. The usual bunch meaning you get the funny guy, you get the asshole, and then you get the underdog, which everyone either loves or completely hates. Or there's always one guy who picks on him, and eventually they befriend each other, as these films tend to go. So these boys go off on deployment, and on their very first deployment, their boat gets blown up by the Japanese in the middle of the Tamar Ocean, and they are there. They're there, and they're stranded with nothing but a giant piece of ship debris to stand on. So only a handful of them survive. It's roughly around 7 characters that survive, and they're all left on this floating piece of hull from the ship. What they encounter is a very angry, very ferocious, very hungry female white shark. And this doesn't really go explained why the shark is so angry and so just, I mean, she tunnel visions on these motherfuckers. Like, there's no other food in the sea except, even one of the guys goes like, why is she doing this? There's half a dozen bodies on the fucking ocean that she could have. And I surmise that it's, somewhat of a maybe potential critic on warfare and how warfare, over the oceans can sort of destabilize the natural order of things, angering Mother Nature and so forth. And that's nothing that's ever brought up. This is just me kind of using context to maybe fill in the background story for the shark. Not that the shark needs one, because really it's a shark movie. It's an hour and 27 minutes, and I'm just there to see some blood. In terms of the carnage candy, there is a lot. They treat the wounds here the way that you would see wounds being treated in any war film, the same way that War Machine that, and I think War Machine did, and I appreciate when movies do that. If you're going to have soldiers as your vehicle for the audience, as your avatar, I like when the violence is close to that of war films because it further enhances the discomfort and the reality that these soldiers are now going through. Even if it's not that they're fighting, an opposing faction, it is that they wouldn't be in this situation had they never enlisted. Showing the grotesque nature of war violence with the shark as a vehicle for that violence was clever, and it made for a lot of really gnarly gore. Expect all of the torsos being ripped in half and floating up to the top of the ocean. Expect plenty of limbs being eaten. Expect plenty of intestines hanging out of people's stomachs. They don't skimp on the gore, and I was very happy to see that. The characters aren't much to write about, though, like at all. The characters are your typical underdog, some one funny guy who isn't like overtly funny. He's just funny enough. And really, a lot of the crew has their moments of humor because, a lot like whenever, if you've served, you know that you end up becoming very friendly with with the people around you and the people that are serving with you, but there's also a comfort that comes with making jokes you couldn't get away with in the civilian world. So they got that done. There is your usual asshole who in this case is very racist, and you have your usual, like, oh, he'll come around moment, which ends up being a sacrifice. And the only reason I don't consider this a spoiler is because the movie isn't trying to like subvert any expectations. What it does well is it gives you good gore. And I think that unlike movies that deal with unlike other movies who deal with sharks or piranhas or whatever, usually it's just people free flowing, floating in the water. Something's tickling them, or they're holding on to a boat. But I thought it was clever that they used a piece of the hull of a ship as a surface for them to create more dynamic action sequences with, because there are moments where characters fall off and now they got to swim to that hull that's floating, or they get pulled onto it. It gives the characters moment to sort of play with the environment and move around and have discourse. Sometimes they get into fist fights because they don't agree with how to handle a situation, so they end up using the space dynamically along with the camera work, so it doesn't get stale like a lot of these movies do, where it's just like in the ocean for an hour and a half. I don't think you can make those movies short enough to where it wouldn't feel redundant or boring. I do like The Shallows and I do like Jaws, obviously, but those films are, or Deep Blue Sea, that's kind of a guilty pleasure. These movies are, they're different. Deep Blue Sea takes place in an installation, right? And then Jaws is Jaws. And then The Shallows did a really good job of making the sharks scary, and that's what I really like about this one. I think that out of most modern shark creature features, I would say Beast of War has the scariest shark I've ever seen, because there are amazing shots underwater and there are slow motion shots above water where he's coming out, or she's coming out, I should say, and the insane amount of prosthetic work that came into creating the teeth and the gums and the face. It feels otherworldly, even though it is, nature, but it feels fucking scary because this thing just comes out of the water pushing out of it. And these shots, these slow motion shots, so there's quite a few of them, when they show her looking her scariest. There's blood in her teeth. She almost feels methodical, like she's thinking, like she's not just running on hormones and hunger, like she is thinking. And I thought that was they made her feel like a monster, like genuinely felt like a monster. And maybe this might be the scariest shark I've ever seen, and all due to the incredible camera work that happened above or below and above water. So there's also some cool shit that happens with them being caught in the water by the Japanese coming in and trying to shoot at them with their fighter jets, which then kind of turns into a fight on the hull with one of the Japanese that finds his way on. And that scene was really good. They do a lot in an hour and a half to keep your attention, because I don't think the characters are going to be what keeps your attention, but the setup is quick. And then once we get in the water, it's pretty much trying to seeing these characters see the situation through creatively, while trying to reel in, you have guys that don't exactly like each other. It doesn't do anything super creative, but I think this is, with a movie like Sting, and this is kind of the natural progression of what I thought he would do next. We did spiders, now we're doing sharks. Don't know what's next. Maybe a fucking safari that goes wrong and now it's lions. I don't know, but this guy made a spider movie creepy and fun, and he used practical effects on that. He used practical effects here. He made a shark movie very creepy and fun. And I think if you're going to make movies like this about a shark, you're always going to be compared to Jaws. I don't think this is trying to be Jaws at all. It definitely shows the shark, but it shows it in a very ominous light, which I can appreciate, enhancing the horror that comes from it. So it felt like, yeah, now you're in its domain and it's God. And the way that it was painted was genuinely scary. If you're looking for some gnarly gore and a decent creature feature where it does some things differently, but it's still very much the genre it belongs to in terms of shark horror, you're gonna get what you want from this. So if you're in Shudder and you're looking for something like this, it's got my recommendation. Anyway, thank you guys for listening, and as always, I will see you at the movies or on Shudder. You already know.